Maleficent versus Jafar. Probably one of the most interesting Disney battles of all time, and probably one that people have been pinned against for years and years. Well, today we are going to go into who would actually win in a fight between these two incredible Disney villains. Let's start with the one, the only, the most recognizable Disney villain of all time, Maleficent. Maleficent represents pure evil. She is ruthless, dark, devious, and will do whatever it takes to achieve her evil goals. Additionally, she is very sinister, which is shown when she taunts Prince Philip after she captures him. Her most famous quote,
"You poor simple fools, thinking you could defeat me, the mistress of all evil,"
indicates that she thinks herself above everyone, even calling her closest allies her pets. I mean, she can call me pet any day. Other than herself, the only other entity for which she seems to have a genuine care for is her pet raven, Diablo. When you got a raven that literally has a name that is very, very close to hell itself, you have to be pretty bad. This is especially evident in her horror at seeing the aftermath of Diablo getting turned to stone. Maleficent also seems to have some emotional instability, which makes her very, very hard to decipher. This is evident in her reaction to the discovery that her goon spent the previous 16 years looking for a baby, where she pitched a nearly truly evil laughing fit before reacting violently towards her goons. At this point, I don't know if I would want to work for her. She is also shown to be very sadistic, which also is shown when she proceeded to psychologically torture Prince Philip simply for her own amusement later in the film. So we got craziness, we got bipolarness, as well as we also have her torturing everyone. If this isn't villainous, I don't know if Jafar could handle this, right? Maleficent is very misleading in her personality. She also relishes in the pain of others. When Merryweather states bluntly, "You weren't wanted,"
You weren't wanted.
Maleficent pretends to be shocked and hurt, remarking,
"Well, in that event, I'd best be on my way."
but then she turned around and cast a curse upon Aurora, cackling while taking in the sweet revenge she had attained. And can we just all agree, this scene's one of the coolest scenes in Disney history? She also expresses sarcasm, which is especially evident during her psychological torture. Now, there is some downsides to her and probably some weaknesses simply because of how her mind works. Let's be honest, she got so mad because Stefan didn't invite her to Aurora's party, pretty much. As well as Fonda indicated that Maleficent has no knowledge of love or kindness that comes from helping others. However, her later capture of Prince Philip, taunts toward Philip regarding his role in undoing the curse, and later her attempts at preventing Philip from reaching the castle implied that she knew enough about love to realize it was a massive threat to her curse on Aurora. But all that aside, let's get to the physical appearance of Maleficent. Do we really know her? So in the left corner, we have Maleficent, who is a tall, slender, pale green-skinned, although some appearances of her depict her with gray skin. Take what you want. Woman with a narrow face and a prominent chin. She is also darkly beautiful and elegant. I don't know who's saying that. I'm just throwing that out there. Her tall demeanor is such that she dwarfs the entire cast, as evident by her debut scene, with King Stefan only being able to stand eye to eye with her while standing on the throne steps. She also has yellow eyes and black horns, which to this day, I still want to know if these are her horns, because in the live action, it's her horns, so I'm just gonna roll with that. But they're very symbolic of her dark magic. She's clad in black and purple robes with bat-like edges, while underneath her robe she wears a dress with the same color palette but with some red instead of purple, and wears a gold ring with a large, mysterious circular black stone in it. More dark magic, I can only presume. Both the horned headdress and the bat wing-like robe represent and foreshadow her dragon form. Yeah, that's right. She turns into a dragon. She also carries a staff with a glowing green orb, which she uses to cast spells. Maleficent is capable of shape-shifting at will into numerous forms, including a floating hypnotic light resembling a will-o'-the-wisp and a massive, monstrous black and purple dragon. Yeah, this character is absolutely insane. Her dragon form can stand upright and is largely black, with her underbelly starting from just below her jaw up to the tip of her tail being purple colored and ribbed. She has webbed fins underneath her horns, and her eyes are a green and yellow, while her tongue and the interior of her mouth is colored yellow. Her claws and sharp teeth are also color black, and she possesses spines across her back and her long neck, some of which form a 3-pronged tip at her tail. Her wings are fairly small, especially compared to her overall size, although they still seem to allow her to fly to some degree. Now, with all this information, you're probably wondering, alright, Maleficent is probably the strongest Disney villain, so how would Jafar even have a chance? Well, the thing is we really gotta dive into the powers and abilities of Maleficent, right? Because there's gotta be some way Jafar can actually face him. I mean, this is one of the matchups of the century when it comes to Disney fans. So let's see what we got here. Maleficent is one of the most powerful villains in Disney history. All right, that's the end of the episode, guys. She describes her own skills as all the powers of hell. Her powers are magic-based, and it is also implied during the christening ceremony that her magic was far more powerful than even that of the 3 good fairies, at least individually, as they admitted they could not outright remove Maleficent's curse, but rather alter it. Using her staff, she can conjure up her spells, such as lightning projections, deviations, and teleportation. Merryweather also implied that she was capable of controlling the weather, such as frost storms. She can even cast powerful dark magic spells like her Forest of Thorns. She was capable of hypnosis, as she demonstrated on Aurora to make her prick her finger, and she also conjured up the spinning wheel and spindle itself, which she used to prick Aurora's finger, which shows she is capable of conjuration. She also implied that the sleeping curse's effects, even when not at full power, were sufficient to effectively halt aging, so long as the curse was in effect. Maleficent was also capable of flying by conjuring energy from her staff, similar to a galaxy or a helicopter rotor. This was presumably used as an act of desperation, given the events that she had to use it in. She is also shown to be particularly skilled at pyrokinetic related spells, as her teleportation sometimes has flames being involved, such as during the christening ceremony and just before confronting Prince Philip for the final time. Her flames, which are always emerald green color, the classic Disney villain color that I vibe with so much, are extremely hot like a sun, strong enough to melt the castle's bridge made of durable stone bricks. Yeah, we're getting in the nitty-gritty here, guys. We're getting every little thing about this character, and we don't know how this matchup's going to come out, but we're going to find out. One of her most powerful abilities is to transform herself into a massive fire-breathing dragon, with flame blast strong enough to effortlessly knock away Philip's shield of virtue. And this form was apparently strong enough to even withstand the Sword of Truth, bearing sufficient enchantments on the 3 good fairies' parts. In addition, her fangs in this form are shown to be venomous in Maleficent Returns, but she lacks immunity to this poison, which ironically also led to her second defeat. See, I told you there's ways to defeat this villain. I mean, every Disney villain has to lose eventually, right? She also possessed some degree of deviation and telepathy, as demonstrated when she was taunting Prince Philip near the end of the film with the revelation that Briar Rose and Princess Aurora were one and the same. In the storybook sequel, she also was capable of petrifying people, which she demonstrated on the people of Aurora's kingdom, including Philip after her revival, and also attempted to do so on Aurora at the latter's request to save the kingdom, although her protection charm by the 3 good fairies prevented this from happening. I would say at this point you're probably like, again, Maleficent is the strongest villain. That's why she is literally the big baddie in almost every iteration when Disney villains come together, right? She is always the leader. She is always the one that is leading the charge, whether it's the Heartless in Kingdom Hearts or just the big baddie on stage at the Halloween party at Disney World. But there has to be a way up on this fight, right? Jafar has to be able to do something. There has to be a weakness to Maleficent. Well, there is one, and that one comes actually, I believe, from the live action version of Maleficent. So we know that she's been defeated a couple times by standard combat, and maybe there's ways where Jafar could do that. But if he really wants to one up on this fight, he has to find iron. The slightest contact could actually burn her skin, and prolonged exposure could weaken her dramatically. However, when determined enough, Maleficent was able to snap an iron chain holding a chandelier with her wings, proving that even iron could barely slow her down when she was at her most dangerous. And that's about it. So when it comes to taking down the big baddie, you either have to get a bunch of different charms on multiple different weapons to take her down, or literally just wrap her in enough iron where she just wouldn't be able to escape. But we have a worthy opponent, Jafar from Aladdin. Jafar is the second most powerful authority in Agrabah, answering only to the Sultan. He is always accompanied by a sarcastic, devious pet parrot, Lago. Jafar primarily operated from a secret lair hidden behind the walls of his bedroom in the Sultan's palace. Whilst presenting a charming and respectable exterior to the Sultan and the people of Agrabah, he secretly holds everyone around him in contempt and is a power-hungry individual. Towards Agrabah's royal family, he constantly manipulates the Sultan by means of hypnotizing him with a magical snake-headed staff, which he always carries on his person. He had traveled widely and amassed a wide knowledge of magical artifacts and legends, which he uses and helps him in his everyday life. Until he uses Genie's powers to become a sorcerer and later a genie, however, his magical abilities were limited to the use of such artifacts as he has collected, and his accomplishments as an alchemist. He also had some contacts within the Agrabah underworld, including the thief Gazim. Little is known about Jafar's past. At some point, he purchased the parrot as his minion, as Jafar noted in The Return of Jafar. As far as Jafar's family goes, he has a twin sister named Nasira, who tried bringing her brother back to life in the game Nasira's Revenge. She respects Jafar, and the sibling bond between them is quite strong. So would it be cheating if he brought her into the fight against Maleficent? I would think so, but I don't put anything past these Disney villains. Jafar is portrayed as an immoral psychopath who will not hesitate to destroy anyone he perceives as a threat to his own sinister designs. Like numerous psychopaths, Jafar wears a metaphoric mask of normalcy throughout the film, establishing himself as a cool-headed schemer and gaining the trust of those around him, despite his rather untrustworthy physical appearance. I mean, if I seen this guy in real life, I would turn the other way because I know this guy is gonna steal my lunch money. Even with his mask, Jafar's psychopathic tendencies tend to seep through and become apparent to the viewer, particularly in the opening scene where Jafar, outside immediate initial anger over Gazim the thief not being the one who is the diamond in the rough, displays no remorse in sending Gazim to his death in the Cave of Wonders, simply proclaiming that
Gazim was obviously less than worthy,
in a rather dry tone of voice. And if sending someone to their death is not evil enough, it gets even crazier. It is not until Jafar gains control of the genie's lamp that he fully shows his true colors, becoming arrogant, tyrannical, and ill-tempered with his subjects. He also was depicted as laughing excessively and in a deranged manner shortly after banishing Aladdin to the North Pole, suggesting that Jafar was also insane and suffered from hysteria. Jafar displays narcissistic tendencies as well, his most obvious ones being his obsessive desire for power and sense of entitlement. However, his lust for power does not stem from a mere desire for authority, though this is a motivating factor, but rather an intolerance for subordination. It is this excessive thirst for power that ultimately leads to Jafar's downfall, however. Upon becoming a sorcerer, and by extension the most powerful man in the world, Jafar realizes that this power is still inferior to the genie's, which drives him to hastily wish to become a genie, without realizing that this would render him a slave for all eternity. Now this is the one part where I'm like, Maleficent could win this fight simply based off of the sense of intelligence, because I don't think Maleficent would ever wish to become a genie, knowing that genies would have to serve forever. Come on, Jafar, you really should have thought this one out. Jafar has a somewhat comical edge that helps to add some humanity to his character, for example, proclaiming "ew" when contemplating decapitation, a trait unusual in a Disney villain, I might add. Furthermore, Jafar has a sadistic sense of humor himself, spurting several puns in a row while keeping Aladdin and his friends from getting the lamp during the film's climax, such as, "Your time is up, don't toy with me. Things are unraveling fast now, boy. Get the point?" Jafar is quick to abuse his underlines as a means of releasing his own anger. Ultimately, this proves to be his final downfall, as Igo ends up turning against Jafar in large part because of his abuse and not giving him credit when it was due. The deleted song Humiliate the Boy also establishes Jafar as an emotional, crazy person, getting a laugh out of seeing another fellow's dreams turn into nightmares one by one, and treating the genie in an especially harsh tone. Additionally, in The Return of Jafar, Jafar was proven to not mind his inability to kill as a genie because there are things so much worse than death, implying that he would simply torture people to the point that his victims wished they were dead. Now, I don't know about you, but that screams Disney villain. One of the things Maleficent didn't do that I remember was that she didn't wish people to die. It was more of like she fought because she had to, while Jafar's over here like, no, I want to torture people so bad that I hope they just want to die. Jafar is also attracted to Princess Jasmine, but primarily for her physical appearance and not for Jasmine as a person. And I mean, all of this is obviously blamed for Jasmine being sexualized in the entire movie, but we won't talk about that. His final wish was initially for Jasmine to fall desperately in love with him so he could make her his queen. Which, again, this could be a way that Maleficent can take advantage or take down Jafar. Because as we talked about earlier, we'll get into it, she can shapeshift, but we'll talk about this in a sec. But what about him? What does he look like, right? We probably know, but do we really know? In the right corner, we have Jafar, who is a tall, bony, middle-aged man dressed in extravagant clothing, always seen carrying a gold, ruby-eyed, cobra-headed staff to supplement his magical powers. Jafar has a twisted black goatee and a faint mustache, as well as gray eyeliner, because he's a boy from the 2000s that really loves heavy metal. He was supposed to be designed as ugly, and the genie makes this obvious when he refers to him as a tall, dark, sinister, ugly man. He's apparently completely bald, as evidenced by when he removes his beggar disguise, acting as the only time Jafar did not wear his distinctive headdress, although it was never made clear whether he was naturally bald or if he just shaved his head for the disguise. Jafar wears black robes that reach the ground over top a red garment with bell sleeves, under which he wears a jet black shirt with very close-fitting sleeves that reaches his wrist, all held in place with a red-violet sash tied around his waist. The shoulders of his outer robe are pointed and curved upward, connected to a long, billowing black cape with a blood-red underside, which his brown shoes curl inward at the tips. He also wears an odd, pale yellowish garment that covers his neck, the back of his head, and his chest. The outfit is topped off with a tall black headdress, seemingly a type of mirret, with a thin yellow pattern lined around the middle and downwards at the front, a ruby-like gemstone situated at the front, and a crimson-red feather sticking out above it. The headdress itself is apparently, yet strangely, made out of metal, as evidenced by the hollow clonking sound it made when Igo briefly knocked it off while trying to get Jafar to calm down from a laughing fit. As Sultan, Jafar wears a white, blue, and gold version of this outfit, resembling the actual Sultan's. When he's turned into a sorcerer, Jafar's wardrobe goes to a more exaggerated, sinister form of his normal attire. The headdress sports distinct horn-like protrusions, the red feather is gone, and only the ruby on the front remains. The shoulders of his outer robe are even pointier and maintain a higher position than before, no longer curved. The sash at his waist is also different. Here he regains his iconic snake staff, but it now has an open fanged mouth that fires beams of magic on command. And then of course you got the Jafar version of the all-powerful genie, and the enormous cobra he turns into, all which I just would not want to deal with. But what about his powers and abilities that Maleficent has to go up against? Well, at the start of Aladdin, despite having extensive knowledge of arcane lore, Jafar did not seem to possess any genuine magical abilities, and thus could have been no more than an alchemist. The closest he had ever come to using magic prior to becoming a sorcerer was with his snake staff's hypnotic properties. In the demo for Arabian Nights, however, he was mentioned to be a part-time magician, as well as a seer, although he was specified to be an amateur in the latter job. Jafar was surprisingly effective at disguising himself when he was a regular human, as evidenced by his posing as an old prisoner to recruit Aladdin into retrieving the magic lamp from the Cave of Wonders. This disguise would reappear during Hercules in the Arabian Night. Yeah, they did a Hercules-Aladdin mashup back in the day. I bet you didn't know that, but that's for a different video. Where he posed as a beggar to trick Hercules into fighting Aladdin. Yeah, we're gonna talk about this eventually. After wishing to become the most powerful sorcerer in the world, he could levitate objects, breathe fire, summon objects, and transform himself in others. In addition, he also was immune to the effects of fire, as evidenced by his passing through the flames generated by him unharmed, immediately before transforming himself into a giant cobra. And then of course, after making his final wish to become an all-powerful genie, Jafar became a being capable of commanding not only the world, but the universe as a whole. However, in the same way as the genie, he was still bound by the rules of being a genie, meaning that he was unable to physically kill anyone, make people fall in love with each other, or bring people back from the dead. He also was unable to travel outside the close proximity of his lamp. Despite this, some of his abilities as a genie demonstrated in both his human and genie forms were reality manipulation, teleportation of either himself or anyone or anything else, breathing underwater, superhuman strength, telekinesis, summoning lightning bolts, superhuman endurance, shapeshifting, telekinesis, size alter. He had so many different powers I cannot even fathom. However, after he was killed and later revived by Hades as a spirit in an episode of the Hercules animated series, it's so crazy that Hercules and Aladdin were so closely related to each other. Jafar no longer has his genie powers, but remains as a sorcerer, and also demonstrated the ability to generate monsters, and was pretty much immortal so long as he had his staff. Whew, and that's a lot. So now it comes to the time of the actual fight, right? Who would actually win the fight between Maleficent and Jafar? In my opinion, it comes down to this. Are they fighting as sorcerers, Maleficent herself versus Jafar as a sorcerer? Are they fighting in general, all powers obtained, meaning Maleficent, dragon form and all, versus Jafar, cobra form, and potentially genie form as well? Well, when you come to this, I believe there's two different ways that these two characters could win, and you guys can also tell me down in the comments who you guys believe would win these fights. Let's start with Maleficent. Maleficent has all these powers, right? She's able to do multiple different things. She's able to actually shapeshift, which I think would be her most obvious trait to winning this fight. She could easily turn into a version of Jasmine, trick Jafar, and just literally kill him in 2 seconds, right? She could do whatever she wanted by just literally tricking Jafar, because as we know, Jafar is not very smart. He can easily be manipulated and tricked, and because of this, and Maleficent being actually very intelligent, she could easily win this fight simply by doing that. I don't think we even have to go into any of her other forms or abilities, because at the end of the day, she could do this. But if we do take the dragon version of herself versus the cobra version of Jafar, I think she easily would win this battle as well. So from a standpoint of a dragon versus a snake, yes, the snake could wrap around her, but I mean, the dragon breathes fire, and at the end of the day, although Jafar is able to be withstanding to fire, this could also play into the fact of the dragon just easily eating the snake. I mean, it just makes the most sense to me. So in those versions, these are the ways that, you know, Maleficent would win as a sorcerer and as their animal forms. But when it comes to just in general, if Maleficent had to face the genie version of Jafar, that's where I feel like Jafar gets the W. And I think it's just because the entity of a genie is he's the most powerful in the world, right? Although he would still lose, now that I'm thinking about it, for the simple fact he is bound by the rules of a genie, meaning he wouldn't be able to really do anything unless someone wished it, right? He would have to have someone that is as evil and cunning as him that would wish Maleficent dead. And the only way this would actually work is if he was the genie and was able to trick Prince Philip or Aurora to actually be the genie for them, because they would have those feelings of trying to get rid of Maleficent, right? But it still would only come to the fact of they would have to wish, like, for him to fight her, I guess. I don't know how this would all work, because again, as a genie, Jafar would not be able to kill anyone. So the only thing he could do is damage her enough that she wouldn't want to continue fighting. So I feel like after all of this is said and done, we got both of the attributes, we got both of their abilities, and we got, in my opinion, Maleficent winning the battle at the end of the day. But who would you guys choose? Honestly, this could go either way. I'm sure there's more plot points you could point out where Jafar or Maleficent could win this battle. So let me know down in the comments below, and also tell me who you guys would want to see fight each other next, and I'll go into describing every little detail that I can find about those two characters. But if you enjoyed this, leave a like, as well as consider subscribing so you don't miss any future videos, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.